This research is going to be focusing on the media and the ways that they have been involved with the awareness and knowledge of domestic violence during COVID-19. Domestic violence is something that can happen to anyone and could be affecting even those that one did not think possible. Picture perfect lifestyles can be rather deceiving. During the current times in the United States and globally, COVID 19 has been affecting domestic violence and becoming far worse and leaving victims with almost no easily obtainable resources. Our system has failed to inform victims of protection and resources that are available to them during this pandemic. Since the beginning of 2020, only 17 states have explicitly stated that victims of domestic and family violence are exempt from the stay at home orders. Out of the places that were deemed as essential businesses, shelters for victims and other programs were not listed, forcing victims to the streets or to stay at home with their abusers. With the need to stay at home, rates of family violence have skyrocketed. If by some chance there were shelters or other programs open and available, they lack the funding that they need to stay open. Currently, victims just have very limited resources and places to seek refuge from an abuser, no matter the type of crime. It is no question that the media can typically exaggerate a story, withhold critical facts, or spin details in the wrong direction. However, during the rise of COVID-19, media outlets from around the world have actually accurately focused on the issues of domestic violence within their communities. The focus has been put on victims of domestic violence and how communities should be helping them more and having resources readily available, not just by phone or online. The media has placed pressure on social service providers everywhere to make services more accessible and put the safety of victims first. The media has also done well by keeping identities unknown while still conveying the importance of the issue and continue to advance the need for the public to be aware of what's happening all around them. For a victim to begin to heal, they need to know that they're validated and that they matter. Victims need to get the help that they need and have easy access to the resources that can achieve this goal. Society could see more and more people being able to walk safely away from violent and life-threatening situations. Victims need various types of support, not just emotional, but legal as well. An advocate is a great way to access these resources, and they are extremely helpful to victims. Victims advocates focus on the person and not the crime. Letting a crime define a person is detrimental to their health. Advocates provide a safe and non-judgmental space to talk about whatever is on your mind. They keep everything extremely confidential, offer protection, help a victim make informed decisions, and oftentimes raise a person's self-esteem. They're someone to count on and talk to, and will also assist in filling out paperwork, helping in the courtroom, and someone who can just simply tell you straight up what is going on because the criminal justice system can be very overwhelming and confusing for a victim. Advocates also help a victim apply for government assistance programs to help the victim find a place to stay, receive medical care, and make sure that they know where their next meal is going to be coming from. Victims of domestic violence are now stuck at home with their abusers, and they have no way to escape. In order to effectively combat this rising issue, policies need to be implemented for the sole purpose of protecting victims and not writing policies that have loopholes that favor an abuser. Our shelters and programs in communities need to also receive adequate funding so they can just not power a building, but take care of those that are in need with nowhere else to go. With the way that the media has the influence to push people, they should be able to use this power for the greater good and raise further awareness on the topic. They should also be able to push for new policies and regulations that include adequate funding for shelters and programs. The Legal Aid Society, located in Saratoga Springs, has made a noticeable effort in keeping people safe. Over the course of the pandemic, they have held various forums over Zoom to better educate the public on the proper steps to take if they or someone they know are victims of domestic violence. For these forums, they bring in local organizations and local government officials to provide free legal advice. They have also launched their own hotline specifically for victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, and more. They provide free legal services, which include filing for orders of protection, divorces, separations, or child custody. Additionally, they can also help with finances, public benefits, housing, and access to health care. This has all been done to achieve their goal of making justice accessible. The State of New York Office of Victim Services provides resources to those as well. One feature of their website is the ability to type in a postal code and within seconds have a list of available resources within 50 miles. There is also compensation that can be provided to a victim for any out-of-pocket losses that were associated with the crime that the victim has suffered through, maybe like funeral costs. They additionally provide a list of rights that a victim has and refer them to the VINE system or other agencies at the state level that may be able to help. In some cases, someone may also be able to have fees waived for replacing a driver's license, a permit, registration, or license plates that were lost or stolen as a result of a crime. On a federal level, the Office of Victims of Crime has many similar aspects to that of the state level. They emphasize how state victim assistance and compensation programs are critical services to help victims after a crime has been committed. Grants for the Victims of Crime Act supplement state funds that reimburse a victim's out-of-pocket expenses. The Office of Victims of Crime is dedicated to identifying the emerging needs and gaps that exist, enhancing the skill sets of service providers and promoting greater awareness within the public. Victim blaming is a phenomenon that happens all too often within our society. Victim blaming is an attitude that marginalizes a victim or survivor and makes it more difficult for them to come forward and report abuse. One reason that someone would want to blame a victim or survivor is oddly to distance themselves from an unpleasant occurrence and creating a false sense that this would never happen to them. By labeling or accusing a victim, others can easily see themselves as different than the victim. To make people more aware of victim blaming and to try and put an end to this, victim blaming statements must be challenged whenever they are heard. We cannot agree with any of the excuses of the abuser as to why they chose to abuse someone, no matter how believable they may sound. Reports from several countries have confirmed that since COVID-19, the domestic violence cases have been rising. The increase can be attributed to the restrictive measures that have had to be taken in order to contain the pandemic, and there is no end in sight. Even though lockdown procedures are necessary, people are still being forced to cohabitate with their abusers. In some areas, the cases of domestic violence seem to decrease, which would normally be viewed as a good thing, but not in this case. The restrictive measures that were implemented to ensure people's health and safety are the same measures that are putting people's health and safety at risk. The decrease must be interpreted as a negative consequence as a result of the pandemic-related restriction measures. Even though these measures are necessary, they reduce the possibilities for people seeking help from emergency services or shelters. While there are no specific cases that have resulted in the arrest and indictment, there are areas of law enforcement across the globe that are drawing attention because of domestic violence increasing rapidly because of the safety measures of COVID-19. In recent news in the United Kingdom, a survivor of domestic abuse is coming forward about the treatment by law enforcement she faced through various stages of the justice system, who belittled her, and then she attempted to open up about the abuse that she's endured. During this time, the UK is not only dealing with COVID-19, but also during changing their domestic abuse bill to ensure that professionals know how to ask about abuse. A woman who did not give her name in an attempt to keep her identity safe, over her lifetime, has been in 3 different relationships where she endured domestic violence and had been continually let down by professionals. She recalls that her childminder abused her from the age of 6 to 8. It was an elderly man, and she could not tell her mother because every time that she saw her, she was being abused. Her father perpetrated domestic abuse against her mother. He cheated on her and watched as her mother was beaten up. After having an arranged marriage at 18 and suffering psychological abuse, she was married again at 21. He was very religious. She always had her face covered, did not leave the house, and she would not even know how to catch a bus. This woman attempted to seek refuge in hostels, but they showed no empathy towards the victims who were there. She had developed a stress-related illness and lost a great deal of weight. When seeing doctors, she would open up, and none of them would ask about the domestic violence. Frontline staff in the UK have been failing for too long to ask women about domestic violence and causing victims to be pushed from services to services, causing years of pain and damage. Domestic violence does not only happen in the poorest households, but all throughout society. Overall, the United States has had a very serious and rapidly increasing problem regarding domestic violence. Domestic violence has been an ongoing issue as early as the 14th century, and during these current times with a pandemic among us, the few resources that are available are dwindling down to even less. These are difficult and stressful times, but effective ways of providing domestic violence with resources are necessary to save lives. This starts with pressuring the media and those in power to truly make drastic reform.